Tennessee State versus Southeast Missouri State is arguably the biggest game of Eddie George's coaching career, and that's because Tennessee State's playoff hopes are on the line. Oh, yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU Podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me. Make a Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day, every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel. Go there right now. You'll get $150 back in bonus bets when you put down a winning $5 bet. Go to FanDuel.com to make every moment more. Game of the week is Friday, the biggest game in HBCU football right now. Tennessee State versus Southeast Missouri State. We're going to break down the key to victory for the Tigers. Only the Tigers, Locked On HBCU. In segment 2, we'll look at the biggest storylines in this game, and we'll kick it off with the biggest matchups. So, Southeastern Missouri's wide receivers versus Tennessee State's defensive backs is probably the matchup that you'd want to track the most. The reason I phrase it that way is because we know when we're watching the broadcast copy, you can't see 80% of what's going on with the receivers. Like, if a receiver goes beyond 10 to 15 yards, it's over. So you'll have little slants and things of that nature. And I think a lot of that has to do with scheme opposed to players at times. Depends on what you're playing. If you're playing press man and it's 3rd and 3 and you run a slant on press man, like, yeah, that's player to player. But a lot of times you'll see a short route on off coverage. It's a little bit more of taking advantage of what the defense gives you. But I think even that, it's the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator in that. Let's say that they're silent partners, and we'll just keep it as Southeastern Missouri's wide receivers versus Tennessee State's defensive backs. But the reason that this is something to track is because this is the best pass offense in the Big South-OVC versus the best pass defense in the Big South-OVC. Tennessee State is the top dog on the defensive side, while Southeast Missouri is the top dog on the offensive side. This is going to be a pivotal matchup. You have strength versus strength. You have two things that each team takes high pride in. The ability to throw the ball is how Southeast Missouri wants to move the football. And then Tennessee State says, well, we a strong defense, right? We got Boogie Trotter. That's the guy that I think of. When I think of the Tennessee State secondary, Boogie Trotter is the first person that I think of. When I think of Tennessee State and what they're able to do really on the defensive side, I don't even have to isolate it to the secondary, but Boogie Trotter is the mind, or is the person that pops into my mind, right? And I think that's because of all of the plays that he makes. He's actually second on the team in interceptions, but it always feels like when I see him, he's out here making an impact, whether that's tackles, whether that's interception, whether that's fumble recoveries. Boogie Trotter, to me, is the name to think of when talking about this Tennessee State secondary. But a lot of pressure is going to be on those outside guys. You're gonna have to account for 3 wide receivers. Southeast Missouri has 3 wide receivers all over 700 yards, and they're led by Dorian, not Darian. So we already know let me not even do that. I ain't gonna be funny. Dorian Anderson leads the pack with 869 yards and 9 touchdowns. Southeast Missouri averages 300 yards through the air a game. Tennessee State allows on average less than 200. So you're looking at over 300, less than 200. Something's got to give. Maybe we end up matching somewhere in the 200 to 260 range, possibly. And I think that would be probably a win for Tennessee State as long as their offense can do what they need to do. I think limiting them to 240 passing yards would actually be a pretty good victory for them, in my opinion. But you also have Tyler Jones and that Tigers secondary, who is one of the better ball hawks in the conference, second in interceptions, with just the ability to get interceptions, have a nose for the football. You have players in there who do that. but the ability to plaster those receivers on the outside is going to be paramount because there's only so much you can do from inside and over the top, right? You have to have these corners when you're going against a group of wide receivers like Southeast Missouri possesses. So that's going to be something that you definitely are going to want to watch out for. This is strength versus strength, superpower versus superpower. I can't wait to track this matchup, even if I'm not able to watch every single movement within the battle. The next matchup I want to look at, and you'll see this a lot, is Bryce Norman and McCoy Casey versus Tennessee State's offensive line. These two men at the linebacking position, for me, they possess a really big challenge because they're on two different sides. It's like a 3-4, right? So you're going to have four linebackers, and McCoy Casey is going to be your guy who's rushing off the edge. Bryce Norman is going to be your guy who's that interior linebacker. If I just got to look at the stats, I'm not watching every single Big South-OVC game. Bryce Norman seems like the clear favorite for Big South-OVC Defensive Player of the Year. When I say this, I'm not just speaking about his contributions to his team and where they rank amongst his group, but then also within the conference. So let's look. On the season, Norman has 113 tackles, 12 and a half tackles for a loss, 5 sacks, and he's even forced 2 fumbles. Tackles, first on the team. Tackles for loss, all of these are first on the team. Tackles in the conference, first. Tackles for loss, first. Forced fumbles, first. Sacks, 5th. You're top 5 in sacks as an interior linebacker in a 3-4 system. That shows your ability to penetrate, your ability to blitz, your ability to impact the game in multiple ways. That offensive line has to be ready. And then McCoy, who is your more edge rushing, right? Think TJ Watt, Terrell Suggs type of guys. Shout out to Terrell Suggs for making the semifinalist in the Hall of Fame, by the way. But that's your type of guy. That's off the edge. You have to watch for him. And the fact that you have to account for somebody inside and outside, it doesn't allow you to just say, okay, we're going to chip here. Like, let's say they're both, it's a very good possibility that they could both come on the blitz, right? So you have that outside guy coming off the edge, just natural pass rushing. And then let's say you have Norman coming up the middle. Well, who is your running back going to get? Who is your running back going to pick up? You going to leave your tackle on the island with McCoy Casey? Or are you going to chip him and say, all right, we need the interior to steady up because we got Bryce Norman coming up the middle? It's a really good conundrum because you look at, well, it's a bad conundrum, actually. I was thinking as a fan of the game, but McCoy Casey has 11 and a half tackles for a loss and 5 sacks. So it's not like he's far behind. He's a monster and getting behind the backfield and wrecking shop as well. This is going to be extremely interesting. So whether it's passing the ball or running the ball, you're looking at between them, they have 24 tackles for a loss and 10 and a half sacks. This is a duo that you're going to have to really contend with. So if you're curious, Tennessee State ranks pretty middle of the pack in the conference and protecting their quarterback as far as allowing sacks. And then lastly, Tennessee State's defensive line versus Southeastern Missouri's running game. And that's probably the one matchup that I highlighted where they hold a huge advantage. I don't know how much of an advantage the linebackers will be to Tennessee State's offensive line. I think that the first matchup is strength versus strength. And while that was a superpower versus superpower, this is something that Tennessee State does really well and Southeast Missouri does not. Southeast Missouri does not run the football well, right? On average, they on something like a per carry average, they run the ball very averagely, and they don't do it often. They run the ball less than anybody else in the conference, which is why if you look back to the first segment or the first matchup, I say that this is what they want to do. They don't want to run the football. They want to throw that rock. That's what they want to do. So you have to be prepared. But if you are a great pass defense, which we know that Tennessee State ranks that, you may be, as an offensive coordinator, hesitant to go full aerial assault against a defense that excels in defending aerial assaults. So that may lead to you running the football more. I need Tennessee State to be prepared for that. I need Tennessee State to be well equipped to stop the run, because if you allow them to run on you, then it's going to be a hard day, because then I believe that the passing game will get going eventually. Even if you slow it down in the first quarter, it'll happen. It doesn't have to happen as continuously as you would think. It just needs to happen on a couple of drives. It just needs to happen on 3, 4, 5 drives. And 5 is even excessive, to be honest. Let's just say 4. Happen on 4 drives, you're looking at 28 points maybe? That's ugly. But if we're talking about being equipped and not just speaking about execution, Tennessee State is well equipped for this. Eric George, 11 and a half tackles for loss. Keandre Booker, Sanders Ellis, both have 11 apiece. Chris Walker is fourth, and he has 9.5. So they know how to get behind the backfield as far as stopping the run. I need them to put that on full display. Tennessee State is the only team in the conference with 3 players over 11 tackles for a loss, right? Eric George, 11.5. Keandre Booker, Sanders Ellis, both have 11. Chris Walker doesn't quite hit that threshold, but he's at 9.5, and he could be at 11 at the end of this game. You could end up having 4 players with double digits, and actually you probably will have it. 4 players with at least double digits if you don't get to 11 tackles for a loss this season. That front line can wreck shop. That's where Tennessee State probably has the biggest advantage in this game. So that'll be something that I will be watching. That's something you can monitor closely whenever Southeast Missouri runs the ball, and hopefully Tennessee State forces them to have to do that. I don't know how you force somebody to run the ball off the top of my head. It's more so force them to pass, but maybe the pass isn't working and now they got to run. That just don't feel the same. But neither here nor there. That's just me thinking out loud. Tennessee State is so disruptive. You got to take advantage here. This is your biggest advantage. And if you make them one-dimensional and that one dimension attacks your superpower, I think you have a way bigger chance of stopping that offense. Now, as we push forward, let's look at the storylines. And it's one that we've been looking at since, honestly, we've been looking at this storyline since Monday, Tuesday. We talked about Tuesday's episode, Wednesday's episode. I took a break on Thursday just so I could come back on Friday and tell you about the FCS playoffs. This is what they're playing for. And I actually have the 5 scenarios that could happen to get the Big South-OVC automatic qualifier. So let's break down each one of those scenarios as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Omaha. Now, if I was Peyton Manning, I'd be calling an audible, but I'm not. And honestly, there's no play better than Omaha Steaks because that's the only place I would go when I'm trying to go ahead and get my feasting on. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. This year, skip the holiday hustle and bustle and save 50% on gourmet gifts site-wide at omahasteaks.com and get an extra $30 reward card when you shop early and $30 off when you use the promo code college. Yes, 5 generations of experience. They are consistently getting the job done. Where else would you want to go when you're trying to get your steaks? And if the answer to that is not Omaha, that just means you haven't had it yet. No more audibles. This is the only play for you. From legendary steaks to mouth-watering desserts and more. Save 50% off site-wide. omahasteaks.com and get an extra $30 off. Get a $30 reward card. All you got to do is use the promo code college on Omaha, OMAHA steaks.com today. You already know where to go. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. I don't know if you know what broke yesterday, but Bryce Underwood has flipped his commitment from Louisiana State University to Michigan. They offered the man $12 million. All right, I understand how it goes, but I want you to go listen to our Michigan and LSU podcast to break down each fan base's drastically different reaction to the biggest news that happened in college football, and I'd say in a few months. This is huge. Number 1 quarterback in the nation. So you get $12 million. I think that speaks volumes of how good that player is, right? Now let's get into our storylines because this is the biggest one here. And the first storyline to look at is the FCS playoff hopes that are on the line. This is the most important game on the HBCU schedule because it's the only game that has any ramifications. And honestly, I don't know. It would be difficult to find a game that could set up to be bigger, right? Maybe a SWAC clincher. Maybe. I don't even think that. This is the FCS playoffs. I think a MEAC championship, because there's no championship game, would rival it. I think that it would be on par. I think it would be on par. They would be equal, and I'll just have to pick a game. But to punch a ticket to the SWAC championship, to then punch a ticket to the Celebration Bowl, no. The right to get into the FCS playoffs is huge, and that is what they're playing for. The biggest stakes that you can play for right now. This is postseason on the line, and it's not necessarily do or die, right? Let's make this clear. I want to make sure everything is crystal. This is not necessarily do or die. What this is win, and you have the best chance to get into the playoffs. You may even get an automatic qualifier, which guarantees you. Lose, you have a tougher chance, but it's still there. And I think that the chances are probably significantly slimmer, and it probably wouldn't happen from how I was told. right? It was definitely on the bubble, but it seemed like it was a slim chance. Seemed like it was a slim chance. Let's get into the automatic qualifiers because you don't even want to have to go to an at-large. The games that you need to watch outside of Tennessee State versus Southeast Missouri, which thankfully they both start at 12 o'clock. This game starts at 3:30. So you'll know exactly what situation that you're walking into before the game even happens. Lindenwood at UT Martin, Eastern Illinois at Tennessee Tech. Ironically, all the Tennessee teams have home games this year in the final game of the season. But Lindenwood versus UT Martin, Eastern Illinois at Tennessee Tech. Those are the games that you need to watch. This right here, I got this straight from Tennessee State's athletic website. These are the scenarios to get to an automatic qualifier for the Big South-OVC. There are 4 teams at play in this. Southeast Missouri, Tennessee State, they're playing right now. Tennessee Tech, or they'll be playing on Saturday against each other, I should say. UT Martin and Tennessee Tech. So UT Martin, Tennessee Tech, Southeast Missouri, Tennessee State. Those are the 4 teams who are fighting for the Big South-OVC automatic qualifier. Actually, UT Martin is the only team of the bunch who could share, right? They have a share of the title, but they cannot get an automatic qualifier no matter what. There's nothing that could happen that would lead to them getting the automatic qualifier. I got this right here, straight from the Tennessee State athletic website. Scenario 1, Southeastern Missouri beats Tennessee State. They are in. That is the automatic qualifier. They'll be the only team in the conference with 1 loss. The other ones get interesting. Let's say Tennessee State wins. Tennessee Tech and UT Martin lose. Now Tennessee State is in because they would have the head-to-head over Southeast Missouri. And then they would have the automatic qualifier guaranteeing your shot at the FCS playoffs. Situation 3, 4-way tie, all at 6-2. Southeast Missouri is the automatic qualifier. Scenario 4, Tennessee State wins, UT Martin wins, and Tennessee Tech loses. Southeastern Missouri wins the automatic qualifier. And then lastly, Tennessee State wins, Tennessee Tech wins, and UT Martin loses. Then you're looking at Tennessee Tech winning the tiebreaker. So of the 5 scenarios that could happen, 3 of them benefit Southeast Missouri. They have the best chance to be the automatic qualifier. One of them benefits Tennessee State, and the other one benefits Tennessee Tech. And though UT Martin could tie, they have absolutely no chance at making it into the playoffs as the Big South-OVC automatic qualifier. And that is the best and most concise recap of how this weekend plays off. Lindenwood at UT Martin, Eastern Illinois at Tennessee Tech, both at 12 o'clock, both at noon. So Tennessee State and Southeastern Missouri will take the field knowing exactly what they need to do and what will happen at the end of the game. The next question that I have is this the biggest win, if they win, of Eddie George's career? I don't know what games just mean more to Tennessee State alum, right? Like, I know we all have games where it's like that one holds a little bit of sentimental value. I don't know what that is for the Tigers. I really don't. And when you're looking at it, that could change the answer to the question. But if we're just going outside of sentimental, to me, the answer is yes, because the postseason is on the line. This is the biggest game of Eddie George's career because the postseason is on the line. To me, if this was the middle of the year and you're going against the top team in the conference, okay, whatever. But this isn't the middle of the year. This is the last game. And winning this either elevates your at-large chances, or it guarantees you'll be an automatic qualifier in scenario number 2, where you win and the other Tennessee teams lose. The automatic bid is automatic. The automatic bid is automatic. So I don't know if the stakes have ever been higher. I don't know if this is the biggest game, because he could have had bigger games and lost them. I would love for you to tell me if this is the biggest game, if this win would be the biggest win, because to me, the answer to the latter at least is yes. But I would love for Tennessee State fans to tell me if this is the biggest game that Eddie George has ever coached in as a team, as a member of Tennessee State. So as we push forward, we're going to look at our keys to victory, because Tennessee State, man, you got to do one thing. And they haven't done it against the other 2 top teams, which is what really gets me concerned. But we'll look at that as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and FanDuel is the official sports book of the Locked On Podcast Network. What are we doing if we're not going to FanDuel? if we're not taking a part of that $150 back in bonus bets that you'll get if you're new to FanDuel and put down a winning $5 bet. It's not hard. It's easy. It's simple, right? And it's big rewards for a small amount of risk. You put down a $5 bet, and if it hits, you get $150 back in bonus bets. You could have put that money down on the Browns last night. Shout out my boy Jameis. I'm always going to show love to him. Shout out to Jameis. You could do it on this weekend's action. You could do it on the college football playoffs coming up. You can do Saturday, Sunday, Monday night, all of it. Matter of fact, there's probably football coming on right after you hear my voice. And if you happen to forget before the game starts, that's okay. You can do it in the middle of the game. It doesn't have to be before. So you go ahead and go to FanDuel.com. If you're new to FanDuel, get $150 back in bonus bets with a winning $5 bet. Go to FanDuel.com to make every moment more and put a little bit of change into your pockets. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked on HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3. And I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. The key to victory. Obviously, there's only one HBCU in this matchup. Southeast Missouri is not it. So we're going to be looking at Tennessee State and what their key to victory is, because I think that it's a simple one, but it's way simpler said than done. And it's protect the football. Protect the football. I'm not saying you have to play a perfect game, but you need to play a clean game if you're Tennessee State, because Tennessee State has, I'll say this, I hate saying this because I think Draylen Ellis is actually a really good quarterback. But in the 2 games against the other 2 top teams in the conference, he has had interception issues. He's only had 2 multi-interception games this season. Both of those were against the top 2 teams, UT Martin, Tennessee Tech. Now you're going against Southeast Missouri. I need to see that it's not a top-notch defense thing. I need to see it's not, oh, well, Tennessee Tech and UT Martin, they're first and second in the conference in interception. So, that's just what happened. Okay, well, Southeast Missouri is third. It's a gap, but they're third. So I can't really use that. It's not as though, well, man, those are some of the best intercepting teams. This team right here, they don't get no picks. No, they get picks. Southeast Missouri gets interceptions. So you have to make sure that you're guarding the ball. Let's look at what Ellis did in those first 2 games against those top 2 teams, because there's 2 things that I noticed: the amount of passes and the amount of interceptions. Now, granted, throwing more does open you up to more mistakes. But if you're going to throw more in this game, you don't have that. There's no benefit of the doubt. You got to protect the football. Against UT Martin, he had 53 passes, 2 touchdowns, but 2 interceptions. Against Tennessee Tech, he had 39 passes, which is a large gap from 53, right? But at the same time, his highest other than that was 33, I believe. So you're looking at still 6 more passes, and he does not go over 30 too often. I think that he may do that this week. It wouldn't shock me, but he also paired that with a touchdown and 2 interceptions. So let's look at a couple of things. One, they don't throw that much on a regular basis. To me, that's getting out of body. To me, that's Tennessee State's offense getting out of character. To me, when you throw that much, if I'm just looking at the numbers. And then the next thing is 2 picks in both of those games. It's the only games of the year where she's thrown more than 1 interception. It's also the only 2 games of the year in which she has either a 1-to-1 or a more touchdowns, more interceptions to touchdown ratio. In every other game, he has more touchdowns than he has interceptions. In this one, he has the same amount against UT Martin, and he has more interceptions than touchdowns against Tennessee Tech. Both of those are unacceptable. You cannot do this in this game. The reason I say this is because you're going against a top dog. This is no disrespect. We can consider all 4 of the teams that we're talking about could share a piece of that Big South-OVC championship, not just the automatic qualifier, but could share, right? Be like co-champions, I guess. I guess they call them that. We could talk about them as all being big dogs. So Tennessee State can be a big dog. This is not to belittle the Tigers. It's to say that Southeast Missouri is a big dog. And when you go against a team of that caliber, you can't make mistakes like this. And the reason I emphasize, for 2 reasons. One, I don't want you to think I'm disrespecting Tennessee State or trying to underestimate them. That's number 1. Number 2, even when big dogs face big dogs, these type of mistakes are what cause you to lose. When upper echelon, top tier teams play each other, you can't be making these type of mistakes. When you're facing that kind of team, those mistakes cost you the game. Period. Right? Like that's the way that I view it. That's the way that I see it. Because at the end of the day, if you throw 2 interceptions, that could either take you out of scoring position, could put the other team in scoring position, could do a lot. You don't have that many possessions. It swings and changes the tides of a game, right? So I hope that is conveyed properly. I hope that I'm being very clear on where I look at both teams and how this is way more about who Southeast Missouri is versus who Tennessee State isn't. But at the same time, I've conveyed it the best that I can. So, well, what can I say? I'd say that they're probably going to go for about 30 attempts. I don't want to say keep the ball out of his hand. He's a talented quarterback. I think Draylen Ellis is a really good quarterback. He recently moved into the top 10 of all-time passing yards at Tennessee State University. I think that he'll probably be 8 when it's said and done. I think this is the last year of eligibility, if I'm not mistaken. I think so. Let's see real quick. He's a grad student, so I'm pretty sure this is his last year of eligibility. He'll probably move up to about 8 or so. He needs 200 or so yards. He should get that, especially with how they've been throwing in these big games. But anyway, you need the running game to step up. I need Jaden McGill to do his thing. I need him to come in, and I need him to produce in the way that he did last week, because Jaden McGill had 100 yards against Gardner-Webb, his first 100-yard game of the season. I need that again. That's the way that I'm looking at it. So this is a huge game. We'll be back on Monday to break down the playoff implications, right? Because they'll have Selection Sunday on Sunday, and then I'll come in on Monday and I'll break down whether or not they were able to make it. I may break down the game too. Just depends on how things go. But we will speak about Tennessee State's playoffs on Monday. So that's what you can look forward to next week. In the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear you, the family, take care. Stay blessed. Peace.